There is a whole graveyard of early 2000s anime that time forgot, series buried under the weight of bigger hits, fan subs lost to hard drive crashes, and just the general chaos that came with that era. And God Guard is one of them. This is a show that starts out pretending to be a toy battler mecha anime, with kids having their own giant robots dealing with episodic scenarios, before it slowly swerves into something stranger and more personal. A story about finding purpose when you have none, about dreams you're afraid to chase, and about how things you create reflect who you really are. And he wraps that all up in a hazy, washed out cityscape with one of the best jazz soundtracks anime ever gave us. And I'm here to talk about it with all of you. So get comfy as we dive into the story of Gad Guard. Our story opens up with a man running through a junkyard desperately holding onto a briefcase, and from the way he acts, along with the confrontation he gets into with another man, we can tell that whatever is in that case is super important. He doesn't go far before he's stopped by a giant machine, referred to as a heavy metal, and from the machine emerges a man. This is Katana. Stoic and ruthless in nature, he's more than ready to kill the man with the suitcase. Upon doing so, we get to see what was in the case the man tried to run away with. Two seemingly unassuming cubes, referred to as gads, and these men were paid a high sum to retrieve it. Whatever it is these gads do, we'll be finding out later. Just then, we cut to our main character and his friends zooming through the busy streets at night. Their movements and demeanor tells us that they're a group of boys who love nothing more than being free. They're in that rebellious phase of their lives where they think the world is theirs. They wind up at a local night bar, a place definitely not for kids, but this tells you that the world they live in is a bit loose on its morals. This is when we get introduced to our main character properly. This is Hajiki Sanada, a boy who doesn't really have dreams but only lives to make money. And as they chill and have fun, the lights suddenly go out and the whole club switches to lanterns. Every day, at exactly midnight, the power in their entire district goes out, forcing its residents to live in darkness. This is why the area they live in is called Night Town. The world this story is set in is one that suffered from an apocalypse that led to pretty much all of Earth's resources running out. Humanity, in an attempt to survive, banded together to build these districts, referred to as units, to live in. The unit Hajiki lives in is called Unit Blue. There is a lot of class disparity in this unit. It's split between three cities: Night Town, Daytown, and Gold Town. Night Town having it the roughest. Filled with crime, violence, and awful living conditions, the people who reside in it have no choice but to try and make it work. Hajiki is one of them. When he's not attending school, he works part-time as a delivery boy, and the very next day after his night out, he's called out to make a very important delivery to a place in Daytown. Upon seeing Daytown, you can already tell how much better life there is. They've got fancy billboards, stable architecture, people can roam the streets casually, and the police actually patrol around. As Hajiki roams around trying to find where he's making his delivery, he gets into an accident that exposes the contents of what he's delivering. It's one of those weird cubes, and Hajiki can't help but be drawn to it. There's something alluring about it that he just can't quite explain. But he doesn't dwell on it for too long, he has a job to do after all. He completes his delivery, dropping the package off with a seemingly unassuming woman, but turns out she wasn't the real recipient as another lady shows up only to find her place trashed. Later on, Hajiki is at school when we get introduced to a new student, a girl who will become one of the main characters, Shinozuka. There's more to her than meets the eye as we see her throw down one of the boys who tries to make a move on her. The day ends, and since Shinozuka is still new to the area, she's paired up with Hajiki to help her find her way home since they live in the same neighborhood. He also helps her move some of her stuff in, and as they do, she asks him if he's got anything important to him. Hajiki can't really answer that. He's a boy who doesn't have anything he holds close or considers to be important. It's money or nothing. But we get the sense that to him, money is just a means to an end. Shinozuka kind of sympathizes with him and shows him some of the things that are important to her. A tiny box filled with shiny buttons and rocks. But as she's showing them off, the box rips open at the bottom, spilling a few of its contents out, rolling onto the streets. Hajiki, without hesitation, springs into action to gather all of them. At the same time, the lady from before, whose name is Wanda, along with her crew are currently transporting the cube to the person who wants to buy it. And as luck would have it, Hajiki accidentally runs into them, and at the same time they get jumped by a mech, which get intercepted by Katana, who is actually working for them. Chaos breaks out as everyone is scrambling to get the cube, but as Hajiki grabs a hold of it, it suddenly begins to pulse, latching onto the nearest metallic surface and begins to attract all metal nearby. It melds and meshes all of that, creating shockwaves before transforming into a giant humanoid robot. Katana, seeing as it could be a potential enemy, goes into attack, but just then Hajiki touches it and it suddenly springs to life, fighting back Katana and his heavy metal. The two mechs don't really fight for long because they need to flee the scene before the cops show up. Katana is reluctant about it, but he and his crew escape, with Hajiki's boss, Hachisuka, showing up to help him get away. So here's the gist of what exactly happened. These cubes that everyone has been vying for are strange artifacts that react to human emotions, and when in contact with strong enough emotions, they transform, giving birth to these robots called Techodes, who are only able to respond to the one who activated them. Katana and his crew were on a mission to deliver the god to someone who was going to pay a high price for it, but since it's awakened, it's pretty much lost all market value it had, and now the employer has no interest in it anymore and doesn't even want to destroy it because it will seemingly go berserk later down the line. But Katana seems hell-bent on destroying it. Hajiki, along with his boss and Shinozuka, have made their way back to their office warehouse, where they'll be hiding the robot referred to as a Techode. Shinozuka wonders if Hajiki is familiar with it since he acted like it was really important to him, but he can't quite give her an answer. There was just something about it that drew it to him. Later that night, Hachisuka meets up with the blonde lady from before. Her name is Catherine, and she's the one who actually found the Gad. She demands her money back, and since she can't get it, she'll be taking the Techode instead. Morning comes and we're treated to an interesting interaction between Hajiki and his mother. She tells him that he can do whatever he wants, but he's not allowed to die. To which he responds that he's not his father, he won't do whatever he pleases and gets himself killed. It appears that Hajiki holds some kind of resentment for his father, and from the photos we see across his home, we can tell his dad was some kind of military personnel. Later on, he's met by his boss who tells him he sold the Techode. Hajiki, very concerned about this, sets out to find it, and that's when he comes across Catherine hauling the thing, so he gives chase, sneaking onto the train it's being hauled in. He comes across the Techode with Catherine again, and just as the two are about to talk, their train gets attacked by Katana who had been following them. Seeing as he has no choice, Hajiki hops on to face Katana. Before they fight, Hajiki can't help but ask why he's doing all of this. What's his purpose? But Katana just hates the Techode. That's it. This man is a pure hater and only wants to see it destroyed. His archaic mech doesn't stand a chance against the fully articulate Techode, and so he suffers an embarrassing defeat, further fueling his hate. As Hajiki basks in his first real victory, Catherine approaches him, asking him to come with her, but he declines. He wants to stay in his unit with the Techode. She sees the determination in his eyes and doesn't try to stop him, so she agrees to let him go, but that doesn't mean she'll be out of the picture because the very next day, she shows up at his job claiming she'll start working here from now on. This is when we also find out the name Hajiki has given his Techode, Lightning. After this, we cut to Katana, sulking after his massive loss. He's frustrated at the fact that he was beaten by someone with less skill, and in a brief moment wishes he had a Techode of his own too, and as luck would have it, he's got a Gad sitting right next to him, the same one he took off with at the start of the anime. He scoffs at the cube, throwing it out the window, and moments later a little girl shows up, pointing to something outside, and when he does go to check it out, he comes face to face with a Techode. Looks like his wish has been granted. So far, God Guard doesn't have a lot going for it. The first couple of episodes don't really do a good job being engaging enough to hook you into the series, and the characters don't really help the case too. In a way, the series looks like it's shaping out to be a more mature toy battler, which I have mixed feelings about. Considering the last one I covered, Kiba was really rough, but I guess at the same time, calling it a toy battler wouldn't exactly be fair because of how it doesn't quite fit into the mold. You'll soon find out later down the line, or from the anime OP itself, that pretty much everyone gets a Techode, and the people that do get them are children, which is why I'm led to believe that this was initially going to be a toy battler. But where I do have to give the anime credit is in the parts that sold me are the atmosphere and the music. The vibes are very grungy and bleak, thanks in parts to the washed out color palette the world is in, and the anime's music, OP and ED2 being nothing but jazz, adds to the whole thing. The anime definitely nails the old American vibe it's going for. It'll definitely have you curious on the world itself the more the story goes on. Continuing on with the story, we are introduced to a new character, Aiko along with her Techode, Messerschmitt. Aiko is the only child of the CEO of a massive company called Central Electronics. Her whole deal is that she's feeling a bit lost in life, unsure where she's going, and while everyone thinks she's set for life, being a rich kid and all, she's not quite sure if that's what she wants. Her story will eventually intertwine with the rest of the cast. After this, we see Katana taking his new Techode for a test run, and he's seen with that little girl from before, Sayuri. Not only does she seem really attached to Katana, there is also something really strange about her. This is also when we learn the name Katana has given his Techode, Zero. Meanwhile, Hajiki has found himself on the run from the gang from before. He was snooping around their junkyard base and got found out. He's able to just barely get away from them, heading back home to hide away, which was a dumb move if you ask me. Later that night, Aiko is once again hanging out with Messerschmitt, giving us a flashback on how she stumbled across it. The way she looks at this robot feels kind of unhealthy actually. It seems like she has found comfort in this Techode in a way she has never had anywhere else. I guess for a girl feeling lost in the world, this is what she needs the most. After she's done spending time with the Techode, she heads back to her home where she runs into her father. He's been genuinely worried about her and how she's been isolating herself lately and tries to reassure her that he's here for her, but their conversation gets cut off when the news comes on, live broadcasting Hajiki's clash with the gang from before. She sees that there's another Techode out there and sets out to see it for herself along with Messerschmitt. Hajiki has put on what I guess I'll call his superhero getup, which is just his dad's old coat and mask. If he wants to protect the people he loves, he'll have to protect his identity too. While he's facing the gang, he runs into Katana again, this time with Zero. They're just about to fight when Aiko shows up too. The appearance of more Techodes surprises everyone, because up until now they all believed that they were the only ones with Techodes. Katana, not ready for a 2v1, leaves, and the two kids are able to have a moment to introduce themselves to each other, but have to part ways almost immediately because of the police. This interaction sparks something in Aiko. Perhaps she has finally found an idea of what she wants to do. We are then introduced to the next character with a Techode, Takumi and his partner Thunderbolt. He's a kid who goes around fighting crime all in the name of justice, believing that's why he met Thunderbolt. He and Hajiki bump into each other while out running their deliveries and soon become acquaintances. They get wrapped up in a museum heist, putting a stop to it with their Techodes, unknown to Hajiki however that this was Takumi all along. They part ways after that, with Takumi seeing Hajiki as a potential ally in his quest for justice, and they do run into each other again a few days later. This time though they're both looking for Katana, however for entirely different reasons, but they've both heard that he's a really dangerous guy who committed a lot of atrocities in a different unit before coming to this one. Speaking of Katana, he's off pulling the same heist the bozos from before failed to do, this time with Wanda. The museum they attack is the very same one Aiko just so happens to be in. She's here because her father is a major sponsor, and once Katana makes his move, she quickly dashes out to follow him. As she gives chase on foot, Katana wreaking havoc as he escapes, she catches a glimpse of Sayuri who is about to be flattened by Zero and swoops in to save her. And in the brief moment that happens, we see Katana actually show some worry for almost crushing the girl. Despite how rough he is on the outside, he seems to really care about Sayuri, but whatever their relationship is will remain a mystery for a while. Sayuri shows next to no emotions after what just happened and immediately asks Aiko if she's friends with Katana. She's a bit confused but responds that she does want to be friends with him. We're back to Hajiki. He's been blowing off school for a few days looking for Katana, much to Shinozuka's worry. So far her character hasn't really done much except follow Hajiki around, asking questions that nobody wants to answer. She feels like an afterthought in every scene she is in, but this is just the beginning of the anime after all. Maybe she'll get better as the story goes on. We do get a bit of a lore drop from her questioning though. Gads were artifacts discovered ages ago, and it's thanks to them that the world was ripped apart. It's also thanks to them that humanity created units for them to live in. We're also shown a bit of insight into Hajiki's obsession with money. He's been secretly saving up in an attempt to buy back the house he and his family used to live in back in Daytown. When his father died, things got really rough and they were forced to move into Ninetown just to survive. And to make things worse for him, he can't save his money at home because of how dangerous the place is, so he hides it in a gargoyle. While he's adding to his stockpile, Takumi shows up and this is when he opens up to him. While he hopes on buying back their house in Daytown, he can't help but feel off about the whole situation. His gut tells him something is wrong but is unsure what it is. As they talk, Shinozuka runs in telling them she saw Katana who came to issue a challenge to Hajiki for later that night. He's determined to get revenge for his destroyed heavy metal, and Hajiki takes him up on the challenge. As Katana prepares for his battle at the junkyard, Sayuri, along with Aiko who's sporting her own hero getup, show up, and true to his fashion, he's immediately hostile towards her. But she's not here for a fight, she's here hoping to get answers. She wants help figuring out what it is Messerschmitt wants to do, which is an interesting reason. Up until now, we've been under the impression that these Techodes are just machines, but now they're laying the foundation perhaps there's something more to them. Maybe Aiko can understand Messerschmitt in a way others can't. But as the two get out of the junkyard, they are met with a horrid sight. The rest of the goons that have been causing trouble since episode 1 lay out battered and bruised, and apparently it was Wanda. Turns out the gem they stole from the museum was actually a Gad, and it began reacting to her negative emotions, warping her into a gigantic junk monster they refer to as an Techode. But she isn't around for long. In fact, in less than a minute she reverts back to her normal self, destroying the gem in the process. And seeing as there are no more distractions, Katana immediately turns his gaze back to Hajiki, and before they begin, Hajiki does try to talk to him. He thinks that since they have the same kind of Techode, which is a very rare occurrence, maybe they could settle their differences and be chill about it. But Katana wants none of that. He wants revenge, and goddammit he'll get it. So they fight, and I gotta give respect to the anime for not animating the Techodes in CGI. Sure, this was way back in 2003 where CGI hadn't really caught on, but the fact that they went by consistently nailing these robots in motion is a feat in of itself. So the fight gets intense, Katana pulling out a gun to open fire on a child, but thanks to lightning protecting him, they end up on the floor, and after a brief struggle, Hajiki ends up holding the gun. You can see the hesitation in him as he points directly to Katana's head, but before he can even think about doing anything, the sound of police sirens cut in, and so everyone is forced to flee, bringing the end to the conflict. As Hajiki runs off, Katana picks up the gun ready to fire at the fleeing child, but he stops. His Techode turns to stare at him. It may not be able to talk, but you can tell what it's saying. In that moment, it's like all the hatred Katana had been holding in his heart begins to slowly dissipate, perhaps bringing new change to this lonely man. Hajiki meanwhile just can't seem to catch a break because the very next day, Catherine gets news of a mysterious jewel being shipped to their unit. She's certain it's a Gad and wants Hajiki to go investigate and probably swipe it if it ends up being the Gad she's looking for. He doesn't want to get involved, but Catherine is a rather pushing one. After this, he heads on to go see Lightning, Shinozuka already there. She's been feeling kind of left out for a while now. Watching everyone else run around with their own Techodes has her wondering if the Gad had come to her, would it have resulted in a Techode too? This has left her with a strong sense of longing. Meanwhile, Takumi has been snooping around the junkyard looking for Katana and runs into Sayuri. He wants her to take him to him, but flees at when Aiko shows up, but she's able to recognize him as Thunderbolt's operator and chases after him, following him throughout town, bugging him until he finally caves in and agrees to talk with her. They go back to his place to talk. From their conversation, we can see just how naive the two really are. He's able to immediately clock that she's a rich kid, and she's kind of jealous of the fact that he lives alone. Aiko can't help but wonder if it's possible for all of them with their Techodes to become friends. She seems really down for that, but Takumi doesn't quite agree. They've all got different wants and needs and all have their own reasons for being with their Techodes, so he doesn't quite think they'd all be buddy-buddy. She lets it slip that she was on her way to meet Katana, and at the mention of that, he prompts her to take her to him. So they return to the junkyard and… Takumi! Yeah, Takumi tries… Yeah, Katana is slowly becoming my favorite character. This man wants beef with all the children. But yeah, Takumi doesn't even try to talk to him because he already clocks Katana as a violent person who doesn't listen to reason. He may be right to a degree, but he shows us the boy's mindset who only sees things as black and white. And this gets reinforced later when, after taking his L from Katana, he runs into Hajiki who's out working. Hajiki can't help but ask him what he's up to which he doesn't respond. Takumi mentions how he must be bored as hell if he's out looking for bad guys to fight. Takumi claps back saying that he does this because he feels like it's his duty. His parents passed away and left him more money than he could ever use, and since he had no desire to get a job, he decided to work towards the good of all people. Hajiki calls him a rich kid passing time, which offends him. He calls him out on how he doesn't see things the way the struggling class does. Not everyone does bad things because they want to, they do it because they have to. Takumi cannot seem to understand that, which only proves Hajiki's point. With no words, Hajiki drives off. Nighttime falls and everyone is out to intercept the Gad which had illegally been imported into the city. Hajiki and Catherine stake out to see if that's the Gad she's looking for, Katana is there because he was hired as a bodyguard to protect the shipment, and Takumi is here to fight Katana, Aiko coming along too. And just as the trade-off happens, Takumi swoops in wanting to throw hands, and in all the commotion, the guard gets corrupted, transforming the train into an Techode. So now everyone has to work together to stop the monster train from making it to the city, Katana included. Unfortunately, they don't get to suplex the train, and Zero suffers for it. It's tough at first, but they're able to beat the train and save the day. And while this was going on, Shinozuka had been watching from afar, wishing she had her own Techode too. Speaking of Techodes, I think now would be a good time to talk about them. I love the concept of these things. They're like Metabots with a mix of Tamagotchis. From the moment they are born from Gads, their owners need to be careful not to expose them to their negative emotions lest they go berserk and turn into Techodes. Sure, this is a concept that has been seen in other toy battlers and monster tamers like Digimon, but finding this premise integrated into robots means there's a lot of ways this could be utilized. While the Techodes are mechanical and cannot talk, only able to move when their masters come in contact with them, you can't help but feel like there's a hint of life in their eyes, and that's what I think really makes them unique. Another thing I really like about them are their designs. They're pretty simple and not very mechanical, but one look at them and you can tell what tropes each mecha falls into. They remind me a lot of the Mega Man Battle Network Net Navi designs, which I am also very fond of. You can also tell Lightning was the one who had the most thought put into its design. It belongs to the main character after all. But man, the person that decided to give it an exhaust pipe scarf was an absolute genius. This alone makes it infinitely cooler. Also, fun fact, all the Techodes are named after World War II fighter planes. I'm hoping we do get to see more Techodes outside of the main kids and Katana, but from the OP it seems very unlikely. Before I continue, real quick, if you guys have been enjoying the video so far, consider leaving a like, and if you aren't subscribed already, now would be a good time to do so. Covering forgotten anime from the early 2000s that nobody talks about or even remembers doesn't exactly do well with the algorithm. So by liking and subscribing, it lets YouTube know that hey, this video is pretty good. It also helps to support the channel. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so it would really mean a lot if you did. With that out of the way, let's get back to Gad Guard. The next episode is a Shinozuka-centric one. Building off her feelings from the last episode, wishing she had her own Techode, she's kind of just been stumbling through her days. That is until she gets a job working as part of a billboard installation crew. And it's something she feels very comfortable in. She loves being high up installing billboards because of how it invokes the sensation of flying in her. Somehow, when she's working, she feels kind of free. The B-plot of this episode follows Hajiki as he's out searching for the missing piece of a package he had to move around, which may or may not have had a guard attached to it. The piece ends up getting picked up, dropped and moved around from person to person as it eludes Hajiki. From this episode, we learn a bit more about Shinozuka. For starters, she used to live in Daytown but left home because she felt there had to be more to life than what she was living. And while she does enjoy her life in Ninetown, she's been unsure of what it is she wants to do with her life. Sound familiar? Later on, she has a conversation with Catherine on the nature of Gads. Catherine cautions her on her desire to have a Techode of her own, because Gads have the power to take something important away from you, like she who had her real name taken by a Gad. Shinozuka, however, wouldn't mind something like that happening to her. She hates her real name. You see, she's actually the daughter of a very successful martial artist in Daytown, a man who was so certain he'd get a son and wanted to name them Arashi or Hayate. But then she was born and given the name Arashi regardless, so she'd rather be referred to as Shinozuka. So that missing piece Hajiki had been looking for winds up in her possession, and it soon resonates with her, turning into a Techode that flies. So now not only has her wish of wanting her own Techode been granted, she also gains the ability to fly thanks to her new partner, Hayate. The nature behind Techodes and Gads are still very mysterious to the characters and us the audience, but from Shinozuka's case, we're starting to see a trend between all of them. The ones with Techodes are the ones who aren't quite sure what they want from life. They have no strong desires for anything, which means Gads cannot be corrupted by their emotions. It's as if these Gads respond to their lack of desire to help them find purpose and meaning. Take someone like Takumi for example. He became a champion of justice after he met Thunderbolt, but prior to that he didn't really know what he wanted to do with his life because he definitely knew he didn't want to work. But it's thanks to Thunderbolt that he can finally carry these things out. Though he's still very flawed in his way of thinking, it doesn't dispute the fact that he doesn't exactly have direction. Even Katana of all people, who is a ruthless killer with a lot of hatred in his heart, was able to create a Techode. He's not someone who had a lot of goals or desires, all he does is what he's paid to do. It's only after meeting Zero that he becomes more active in partaking in violence, further proving that Techodes are made to help their masters despite what their goals are. And this plays into the next episode that introduces us to a third thing born from Gads, Gadrians. Gadrians are Techodes born in the same way, however they're sentient and take the form of whatever the person that was holding them was thinking about. The first Gadrian we get to see is one born from a little kid who was just thinking of birds. But as quickly as it appears, it gets taken down by two people piloting heavy metals. This is Sekai and Issa, sibling wanderers who go around destroying Gadrians for money. They're survivors of the now destroyed unit Cobalt, a unit that was ravaged by a Gadrian when they were younger. For their next job, they have to head on over to Unit Blue to get rid of a humanoid Gadrian, that being Lightning. They immediately cause a scene when they get to Unit Blue and quickly get into a fight with Takumi and Thunderbolt. The siblings think Takumi is being possessed by Thunderbolt and urge him to get away from it, but he doesn't listen and gets floored by them. They absolutely wreck Thunderbolt, but before they can finish it off, the two are able to get away. The siblings are a bit confused at the sight of what they think is a Gadrian taking orders from a human. Since they can't chase after it, they let it go. The duo later find themselves at the junkyard in search for Katana, but run into Aiko who's there waiting for him. Sekai tells her about Gadrians and what they did to Unit Cobalt and asks her if she knows anything about Lightning, but she feigns ignorance, but just then Hajiki shows up. They argue over the nature of Techodes, Hajiki believing Techodes are their friends and would never destroy a unit, but Sekai thinks otherwise. He shows Hajiki a photo of his target, Lightning, and that Hajiki is visibly shaken by this but tries to keep his cool. But later that night, Hajiki goes to them, looking to either settle their beef or stop them for good. The sibling duo are so convinced Techodes crave nothing but violence, Hajiki using his to fight is proof enough. His ideals get shaken up a bit by this, causing the two to take a beating. Just then, Hachiska and Catherine show up with a huge industrial laser cutter and equips it onto Lightning. It's dangerously powerful and further proves Sekai's point. Determined to finish the machine for good, he fires one more shot, but his heavy metal functions and fires directly at Hajiki. But before it hits him, Lightning gets in the way to protect him. This act causes Sekai to begin to doubt himself, and just as he's about to back down, Lightning begins to fuse with the laser cutter. Techodes restore themselves using metal, so if it goes on to absorb the laser cutter, it'll become a part of it. But in a surprising response to Hajiki's will, Lightning rips out the weapon, resisting the use of violence. Upon seeing this show of willpower, Sekai can't seem to finish up the machine, and so he gives up. And then the anime does something strange. Towards the end of the episode, it pulls a time skip, showing us a much older Issa. It appears this episode was her recounting her story to a bartender trying to gather information on Gads. With nothing new, she returns to Sekai and the two drive off. It was honestly out of place and head scratching, but it shows us that after that night, the two had a change of heart, though it doesn't look like they will show up in the story again. After this, we are treated to a Katana focused episode. He and Sayuri hop on a train to a different unit, Unit Grey, to get some good parts to help repair Zero. On the way there, Katana can't help but ask her about her parents and why she doesn't go to school, to which she just answers with a smile. At Unit Grey, they meet up with Katana's old mentor/adoptive father, Radiguet, a professional digger. In this world, diggers are people who excavate old machine parts from the old era before the calamity to repurpose, mostly for the use of heavy metals, and Radiguet is said to be one of the best around, which is why Katana is here. He wants some of that premium stuff. So until he can dig up some good stuff for Zero, Katana and Sayuri are stuck here, and Radiguet takes full advantage of that. From the time we spend watching them together, we learn that when Katana is happy, his cheek twitches ever so slightly, and he's also really good at playing the trumpet. We also get to hear his backstory. He came from a pretty rich family. His father was a wealthy trader and his mother was a famous actress, but they died while out on a cruise, leaving him as the only survivor. In order to keep Katana around just a little longer, Radiguet pretends to only fight junk while hiding the real valuable parts away. The man missed his son and wanted to spend as much time with him before he left, because he felt that once he was gone he would never see him again. And this gets proven true when a detective who's been out hunting Radiguet for 40 years has now finally gotten to him, but he doesn't go down without a fight. Unfortunately, he gets gunned down before Katana is able to come to his rescue. With his Techode, he wreaks havoc on the police, avenging his father. This is the most we've seen him express himself, and it was nice seeing this side of him. He's at least able to say goodbye one last time to his father before laying him to rest, bringing an end to one of my favorite episodes in the anime. The next episode after this takes a much different approach to storytelling than what we're used to. The episode constantly jumps back and forth between a couple of days, and it gets pretty hectic sometimes, but to cut it short, Hajiki is on the run from the police who got in the way of a delivery job he was in the middle of. He had to deliver something super important. Turns out it's the key to a box holding money the client had stolen from the Mafia. Hajiki and Katana end up butting heads over it until Katana opens the box revealing the money. He takes half of it for himself and leaves the other half for Hajiki, who isn't exactly excited getting dirty money. He's still on the run, and while he's out in the woods, he bumps into an old classmate of his, Melissa, who is out camping before she moves to another unit. She and Hajiki take a detour to an abandoned airbase for some sightseeing, and this is when Hajiki gets a flashback of his dad. His dad was an Air Force pilot who was going to be one of the first people to try flying a plane up into space, which may sound ridiculous, but it tracks since this world is heavily inspired by that post-World War II era. But unfortunately, as he took off, the plane blew up mid-flight, and Hajiki watched it all happen. And while I welcome showing us what happened to his dad, it sort of makes things weird. In the earlier episodes when we found out his dad was no more, we get the sense that he, along with his mother, seemed to hold some kind of discontent for his father, who went off to do something reckless that led to his death. It made you think that he didn't like his father all that much. But after seeing this, it feels a bit unfair, I guess I should say. If anything, his father was a victim of a larger system that didn't understand the science behind space travel. He was a sacrifice. And while it's nice having that cleared up, it still rubs me the wrong way. Melissa thanks Hajiki for bringing her here and wishes they could have been friends sooner. He responds that they're already friends and they leave for the city. The day ends with Hajiki throwing out the Mafia money from the top of a building for random people down below. It's honestly a pretty cool act. Bit by bit, I've been gaining more and more respect for Hajiki as a main character. The next couple of episodes after this are more self-contained and barely add to the already minimal plot the anime has, but what they do is show us more sides to the characters. Hajiki unknowingly delivers a bomb to a Mafia gang, killing them and inadvertently making him an accessory to murder. For a kid who just accidentally killed people, it weighs heavily on his mind and he has no choice but to live with it. This ends up leading him to team up with Takumi to investigate. Turns out there was a Mafia war going on, which got worse after a particular detective Takumi really looked up to died while investigating them. Coupled with the fact that there's a mysterious heavy metal going around attacking gangs, it shapes up to be quite the mystery. It's also during this investigation that the two boys finally come clean about their identities to each other. Hajiki tries to ask him if they can permanently team up, but Takumi rejects the offer because they both see the world differently and could never work together. It turns out the heavy metal that was attacking the Mafia was actually an Aiko that used to be a Techode belonging to the dead detective. Upon having the power of a Techode, he went mad with power, wanting to team up with Katana to destroy both Mafia gangs. But his negative emotions caused the Techode to absorb him, becoming an Aiko with the only thing on his mind being to destroy the entire Mafia. This reveal shocks Takumi because he assumed the detective was also a champion of justice. Anyway, they defeat the Aiko and the police are able to put a stop to the Mafia. Next episode, Hajiki has to deliver 100 wedding invitations in 2 days. He gets into all sorts of hijinks going all over town. Meanwhile, Shinozuka is out looking for her cat who's been roaming around the city. She's especially worried about the cat because she feels a special connection to it. It was thanks to the cat that she was able to meet Hayate after all. Hajiki helps her search for it and they bond over their feelings about having their Techodes. They're able to find the cat tucked away behind Hayate, this time with kittens. Following this, the town is plagued by something able to do this to people. This brings Takumi into action. He wants Hajiki to help him out, going off about how they're gifted beings because they have Techodes that let them make dreams a reality, but Hajiki wants nothing to do with this. But then later on, when the person behind this, a hitman by the name of Takinaka, goes after Katana, Hajiki swoops in to help him, and complains about the whole ordeal throughout the whole episode, saying that this has nothing to do with him and how he doesn't have to suffer the same thing Katana is suffering, blah blah blah, but this makes no sense. Like, bro, you were the one who butted in. This whole episode writes Hajiki in a way that feels very out of character. But this was done on purpose because deep down Hajiki has been trying to deny the fact that he's a lot like Takumi and Katana, people who are more than ready to use their Techodes to settle things with violence. Anyway, it turns out that Takinaka is actually an Aiko and they are able to use lightning to defeat him. Next is an episode that focuses on Catherine and her obsessive search for Gads. The dogs have been mysteriously catching on fire and she's convinced it's a Gad that's causing this. She and Hajiki go on to investigate and come across a man holding onto an odd idol, mumbling things to himself, and quotes literature when spoken to, staring off to the distance. When she tries to take the Gad from him, he gets really defensive about it, leading to a fire breaking out, injuring Hajiki. We also learn that she and Hachizuka, Hajiki's boss, go way back. They used to work together as part of some organization, and he was the most skilled man there. When we initially met Catherine, we were under the impression that she was some kind of femme fatale who had herself put together. Her quest for Gads felt more like a suave interest, hunting for the treasure she will use to cash out. But this episode completely recontextualizes her. She's actually a girl failure living in a dingy apartment she's owing rent on while mooching off Hachizuka however she can. Her interest in Gads no longer comes off as quirky but rather obsessive. Catherine is empty. Whatever that Gad she's looking for took from her left her a broken woman with an unhealthy obsession trying to get back what she lost. She fails to see that not only has she lost her name, but she's also losing her valuable time too. This is something Shinozuka calls her out on, but the only way Catherine responds is with a slap. She's way too deep in that sunk cost fallacy and goes after the old man again, causing yet another fire, putting her life in danger, but thankfully Hajiki is able to save her, defeating the spawned Techode in the process. The old man is happy it's finally gone. Catherine can't comprehend why he'd be happy in losing something so precious. To which he responds that all it ever represented was lost time to him. Nothing more, nothing less. You can't get back lost time. All you can really do is move forward regardless. And while a bit of her understands what the man is saying, she just can't help herself. She has to find her Gad to gain back what she lost. But it's been so long she can't even remember what it was she lost in the first place. It's tragic, but you can tell something has really changed in her. You can only hope that she gains the strength to move on. After this, we shift our focus to Aiko. She and her father are talking about her future and how it's about time for her to decide what she wants to do with her life. He also reveals to us, the audience, that she's actually adopted, but he doesn't love her any less for it. He's concerned about her future because what he really wants is for her to inherit the company when he retires to continue his legacy. But he's also not pressuring her to take up that role. However, he does try to sway her by showing her his massive collection of Gads and promises her this will all be hers if he does become his successor. Aiko still isn't sold on this. She begins to believe that her father doesn't really care about her and only sees her as an object to help extend his legacy. So the next day she goes around looking for Katana while sulking, and she does find him. Turns out he's been hired to go after her father, but I guess he changes his mind when he finds out that she's his daughter. But then she ends up getting kidnapped by a guy named Jack. Jack was one of the people working with Wanda back in episode 1, and since then he's been showing up from time to time just goofing around. He demands all the Gads in Mr. Harmony's possession in exchange for his daughter. Aiko doesn't believe he'll agree because she doesn't think she's that important, but Jack is able to knock some sense into her, showing her that she is in fact loved. No man would go through all that stuff for someone he didn't love, and this helps put things into perspective for her, realizing that perhaps she's been wrong all this time. So nighttime comes and they go on to make the exchange, her father upholding his end of the bargain while bringing every single Gad in his collection just to get his daughter back. But then they get interrupted by another member of Jack's crew going solo in a heavy metal. With this guy causing chaos, Aiko steps up with Messerschmitt to stop him, revealing her Techode to her father and in the process saving the day. After that issue is settled, the two share a moment. Aiko tells her father that she's thinking of leaving home, that thanks to Mecha she doesn't feel afraid anymore and can go anywhere. He doesn't try to stop her. In fact, if that's her true decision, he'll support her regardless. While she said all that, she doesn't really leave home after this. She only said that because she wanted to see for herself how much her father really loved her, and with a declaration of how much she's proud to be the daughter of the Harmony family, the episode ends. The story does begin to pick up after that episode, with Takumi taking the reins. He's out crime fighting and crashes into a strip club where he meets one of the recurring police officer ladies who's there working part-time because she can't make it on just a cop's salary. Takumi's naive mind can't believe a cop would be doing something like this. This strip club does work directly for the Mafia, but the cop lady can't really be bothered refuting what he's saying. She's only doing this to make ends meet, something he can't really understand. This is a callback to the conversation he had with Hajiki a while back. Takumi is a boy so blinded by his sense of justice that he cannot see that there's a lot more nuanced things people do than simply good and evil, and the rest of the episode continues to beat into him that not everything is black and white, but he still refuses to learn. He gets into a fight with Katana and loses. The boy takes nothing but L's, and to add insult to his ego, Katana doesn't even see him as someone worth fighting because of how weak and flimsy his ideals are. So while he's out brooding the next day, he runs into Aiko and Hajiki. Aiko invites him to her place as well as the other Techode holders, Hachizuka and Catherine included, for a dinner party hosted by her father. At said dinner party, Mr. Harmony proposes to holding on to the Techodes in order to bring peace to their units. Because let's be real, the moment these things came to be, the units got more and more dangerous, equal parts thanks to Katana. Everyone is kind of suspicious about him, Takumi especially, who thinks he's an evil businessman trying to use these things for his nefarious schemes. But credit to the anime, he's not actually an evil businessman. And to prove it, he does show everyone his Gad collection. He's doing all this to keep them away from those who would use them to cause chaos, like Katana. And as he mentions Katana, we're shown a suspiciously folded piece of paper. Takumi isn't buying what he's putting down and leaves, Aiko following him. The two then get a chance to talk, and this is when we find out what actually happened to his parents. Takumi's parents aren't dead. They used to work as officials for Unit Blue, but they weren't exactly good people. One day they just up and left, taking all the money that was meant for their unit's reconstruction with them, which is why the unit is in such a dilapidated state. Now it kind of makes sense why Takumi is so hell-bent on doing what he does. Perhaps a bit of him feels responsible for what his parents did, and this is his way of atoning. It looks like he wants to say something more, but holds himself back, leaving the mansion. As he wanders through the streets, he runs into that police lady from before. He tries to egg her on to arrest him, but she's off duty and not interested. He's all around being a little shit to her, calling her a fake upholder of justice. It doesn't stop there, as later, in the dead of night, he breaks into Aiko's house and tries to take all the Gads for himself. But when he gets there, the vault had already been cleared out. Someone beat him to it, and he thinks it's Katana. He deludes himself into thinking Katana is up to something diabolical. And when Aiko shows up to talk to him, he attacks her, thinking she's working together with Katana and doesn't try to listen to what she's saying. However, he stops, furious at himself and wallowing in sadness. Thunderbolt then begins to move on its own, attacking Messerschmitt, refusing to listen to commands. It goes berserk, wrecking the shit out of Mecha. The two kids can only watch in horror as the machine ruthlessly attacks. This beating goes on for quite a while because Aiko is able to call Shinozuka and Hajiki for help, and when they do get there, Thunderbolt is still going at it. So Lightning tries to fight Thunderbolt but doesn't put up much of a fight. Then Katana shows up, dropping some heavy words on the boy. Techodes are a reflection of the user's heart, a mirror of sorts that brings life to the user's deepest feelings, even unknown to them. What Thunderbolt is doing right now is showing Takumi that side of him he's been denying for so long. He has someone who has only ever accepted his view as the truth and lashes out at anyone who doesn't fit his ideals, claiming that it's all in the name of justice. But in the end, he's just a kid who wants to show off he has the power to do these things. Takumi tries to appeal to his Techode, which had stopped moving at this point, but the moment he touches it, it fades away, reverting to a god before it fades away too, meaning Thunderbolt is gone for good. And even after all of this, he still refuses to take accountability for what just happened, blaming Aiko and Mecha for the loss of Thunderbolt and storms off. Immediately after, Jack shows up again, this time seeking refuge from Katana. Meanwhile, at the same time, Catherine is met by an old man by the name of Balut, who's here to see her to gather whatever information he can in regards to Techodes and Gads in order to put a stop to Katana. The two are very familiar with each other, vaguely talking about things from the past. She, however, wants nothing to do with him, and this is when he informs her that he met with Hajiki earlier, seeking his assistance in fighting and putting a stop to Katana. She's not happy about this. Speaking of Hajiki, he's back home, sheltering both Jack and Takumi, and things seem okay until Katana attacks his home and holds his sister hostage in exchange for Jack. Hajiki refuses to hand him over because he knows that if he does, Katana will kill him. With his hand forced, Hajiki has no choice but to fight back with lightning. After denying it for so long, he admits that he and Katana are actually alike, something that actually makes Katana happy to hear. However, he swears to never become the kind of man he is, and vows to put a stop to him right here and now for the sake of the entire unit. Their fight doesn't go as well as you'd expect because while he's admitted to being a lot like Katana, he's still rejecting parts of himself. He refuses to accept that he does like fighting. Techodes are a reflection of a person's inner desires, and Lightning is proof of that, but it's something he doesn't want to acknowledge. And to further sell this, Lightning isn't really putting up a fight because deep down Hajiki can't bring himself to hate Katana. This leads to them losing, Lightning taking a thrashing. Katana is sorely disappointed about the outcome of their fight but doesn't finish him off because, and what I'm about to say might sound weird, Katana wants Hajiki to become his, along with all of Knightstown. He wants to witness Hajiki become the very thing he's trying to reject. He wants to savor that. It's weird and obsessive, but it's true. Their conversation gets interrupted by Takumi, who hands him a piece of paper, the very same one that was in Mr. Harmony's Gad vault, forcing him to leave. What could possibly be in that piece of paper? A photo of a younger Katana with a girl that looks eerily identical to Sayuri. This reveal brings up so many questions. Why did Aiko's dad have it? Why does the girl in the photo look like Sayuri? Does this mean that Sayuri is actually a figment of Katana's imagination? But then that can't really be because we've seen her interact with other characters. And most important of all, why can't Katana seem to remember this? But for now, we'll have to wait a bit longer before we get these questions answered. Thanks to Katana's active aggressions lately, crime in Ninetown has been at an all-time high. There's a lot more violence out in the open, and Katana himself is reveling in this. Meanwhile, Hajiki's massive loss has had him feeling depressed. That loss shook his whole worldview, and to add salt to injury, when his family was in danger, he couldn't really protect them. And while he's been beating himself up about this, he runs into Jack, who plans on leaving the unit later that night, and Hajiki wants to follow him. In a way, this is equal parts soul-searching and punishing himself for bringing danger to his loved ones. So he leaves a note as well as some money behind for his family before leaving. Shinozuka finds this, however, and rushes to him. She confronts him about wanting to leave, even opting to beat him down to make him stay. She lays her feelings bare to him, wanting him to stay because she can't stand being alone without him. He can only thank her for being honest, but doesn't change his mind about leaving. That is when Katana shows up again, interrupting their moment. He's quite upset Hajiki wants to leave town. In fact, Hajiki saying he wants nothing to do with him anymore pisses him off even more than we've ever seen him, so he tries to fight him right there, but Hajiki doesn't want to and flees. He makes his way to the place he was supposed to meet Jack and leave town, but unfortunately Jack won't be able to make it because he got shanked by one of his former crew members, dying in a pool of his own blood. So he leaves, alone. The next day, Shinozuka informs and tries to tell the others about Hajiki's disappearance, but nobody seems all that bothered by it. They just say it's something a man's gotta do to figure shit out sometimes. I too get the strong urge to leave it all behind, so I guess I can relate. As she heads home, she runs into someone who refers to her as Sis. This is actually her brother, who's here to tell her that their father has actually been worried about her and wants her to come home to see if she's okay. So she does. Upon meeting with her father again, she's immediately tense. All he does is berate her, tell her she's a coward for having a weakness in her heart, and then calls her by her name, Arashi, the very name she hates. She left because she couldn't stand the ideals he forced onto her. She didn't run away, she wanted to fly and figure life out for herself. So without trying to listen to more of his nonsense, she leaves. But it's in that moment she finally understands why Hajiki left, and without a moment to lose, she hops onto Hayate to catch up with him. It doesn't take her long to find him since the truck he borrowed ran out of gas. He's surprised to see her but welcomes her nonetheless. The two are able to bond over their desire of wanting to go far away. Shinozuka understanding where he's coming from and why he's doing what he's doing. She wants to spend more time with him and offers to follow him all the way to the unit border before parting ways for good. In the middle of their journey, however, their truck with Hayate in it gets stolen, so the two have to go after it and wind up at the unit border. They're able to get it back but get split up in the process. Thankfully, they get reunited later under the pouring rain. Shinozuka declaring she'll go wherever he's going, no longer wants to be apart from him, so from here on out, the two will become much closer. They end up in a small town on the countryside and have been there for weeks due to Shinozuka falling sick from being under the rain for so long. While they've been there, Hajiki has been working at an orchard picking apples. However, the other, older workers have a problem with him and think he's shady. They butt heads for a bit, but Hajiki proves himself to them later on in the episode. Two major things come from this episode. One, we see just how much Hajiki and Shinozuka's relationship has grown as he's been caring and looking after her throughout her sick days, and she helps out however she can when she gets better. She quite enjoys the time she spends with him, saying how that even though they've been here for a while, it feels like they've been at this for a really long time. And he kind of agrees. The anime makes sure to treat this moment with respect. It doesn't treat it as humorous with both of them blushing or acting flustered, but takes it as something more serious, showing that their relationship is actually a real one. They are totally endgame. Then there's this subtle cute moment that happens later on in the episode. The two bites from the same apple. not making a big deal out of it, when in the previous episode, she couldn't bring herself to drink from the same bottle he used. God Guard is filled with tiny character moments like these that when you pay attention to, help you understand the characters just a tiny bit more. The other big thing to come out from this episode is the reveal that Hajiki's father might actually still be alive in another unit, the only proof of this being a photo taken 2 years ago. He finds it hard to believe since he watched his dad blow up, but sets out regardless along with Shinozuka to uncover the truth for himself. But before we can see where their journey takes them, we go back to check on what's been going on in Nighttown. Things have only gotten worse thanks to Katana's violent antics, and the police have just about had enough of him. They carry out a raid on him, but he's able to hold them back, but not for long because Zero seems to be reaching its limits. All the fighting coupled with Katana's increasingly erratic mental state has caused Zero's performance to drop. But just before it looks like he'll get caught, he gets saved by Wanda and a bunch of thugs fighting back against the police. Meanwhile, Takumi has been finding it hard adjusting to life without Thunderbolt, so he's working at Hajiki's mom's restaurant, which is currently serving some ex-Mafia thugs. He's not so fond of the idea of serving food to thugs and doesn't really put any effort into preparing it. This is when Hajiki's mom hits him with some really solid words. She tells him that the most important thing about cooking is people. If you imagine you're cooking for the people who mean the world to you, it'll always taste good. But Takumi can't seem to think of anyone who's important to him, not his parents, not his friends, nobody. He finally comes to accept that all this crime fighting and justice he was talking about was never for the sake of the city or its people. He just wanted to feel strong. He was doing it for himself. To which Hajiki's mother responds that there's nothing inherently wrong with doing things for yourself. What really matters is deriving joy from the things you do for yourself. If it weighs you down so much, then what's the point? This small conversation is what sparks change in the boy. It doesn't stop there for him too. Later on, he meets up with Aiko and the two visit the damaged Messerschmitt. He wonders why she hasn't restored him yet considering how much he loved her Techode, but she doesn't really want to. Aiko felt like this was for the best. The way she describes it is like graduating from using training wheels when you were learning to ride a bike. Without them anymore, you can go much further than you did. And it's an apt metaphor. But Takumi struggles to understand. But he will in due time. Back to Katana. Wanda wants him to join them in launching an attack on the police, which he has no qualms against despite Zero's condition. As he prepares for the upcoming fight, he notices Sayuri is missing and can't seem to find her anywhere. But he does slowly begin to remember her though. She was a childhood friend of his. The two spent a lot of time together. To Katana, these were the moments he was truly happy. But then if that was from his childhood, why is she here again? You watching, or listening, probably already have an idea what's going on with her. He does find her much later, with Zero. She asks him if he's going to die, since the attack on the police will pretty much be a suicide mission for him. He doesn't answer. To him, the life he has doesn't exactly count as living anyways. So since he's going to die, she says she's going to go to the sky. He doesn't like the idea of her leaving him and asks one final question. Is she human? But he doesn't get a response. She's already gone. Later that night, the attack on the police begins. But for some reason, Zero doesn't want to move. It has no interest in fighting the police, but rather wants to go to where Sayuri is. And as you know, Techodes reflect the wills of their users. So with only one thing on his mind, he ditches Nighttown and all the fighting to go to Sayuri, which will play into the climax of the story. Shifting our focus back to Hajiki and Shinozuka, they've arrived at a port town where they'll need to hop on a boat to get to Unit Kaki. However, because of the Techodes they'll be carrying, they need a lot more money to have them shipped too, so they spend the next couple of days at town working to gather funds. Hajiki stumbles upon an abandoned mansion with a girl making glass sculptures. Her name is Kirara. Kirara has been in town for a couple of months just making glass. She has the goal of shaping glass into the real form she wants it to be, but is having trouble doing that. She and Hajiki bond over making glass, which makes Shinozuka a bit jealous. Things aren't quite right though. Sayuri randomly shows up, says some airy stuff before leaving, and Kirara's body is colder than that of a normal person. Turns out she's not a real person, but a Techode, using glass to assume the form of a girl who had passed away 3 months back. Her final thoughts were that of making a glass swan for her father, and it's what this Techode has strived to make for so long. However, she'll never be able to do so because she's run out of time. With her form shattering, Her final words to Hajiki is to always be honest to his feelings, especially in regards to Shinozuka. So to honor her memory, Hajiki makes one last glass sculpture for her, a glass swan. With enough money saved, the two are able to hop onto the next boat to Unit Kaki. On the way there, they encounter a mysterious man wrapped in bandages reaching for the stars. Hajiki is a bit entranced by him but can't seem to figure out why. It's only later when they arrive at the docks that does he realize that the man kind of looked like his dad. So with some more asking around, they find out he often comes to town from a deserted island off the coast of town. They also find out the reason he's got bandages all over his face was because of an accident a couple years ago that left him permanently scarred. So with a set direction on where to go next, they head for the island. On the island, they meet a man named Bob who's not too happy to see them but doesn't stop them from staying on the island. It also doesn't take them too long before they find the bandaged man from before. He's just there, mining away at some ruins trying to find machine parts. They ask for his name, Yujiro Sanada, the same as Hajiki's father. They ask him several other questions only his father would know, and he answers it all perfectly. But when they ask him what he's doing and why he never bothered to go home, he looks up to lightning and says he did go home. There's a monotonous tone to his voice, and when they watch him the next day, all he does is do the same thing over and over again, mining away. There's just something off about him. His sole reason for doing all this because he wants to fulfill his dream of going into space. He's trying to dig up rocket parts for that purpose. After hearing his dream, Hajiki can't help but be compelled to help out. In a way, this is him trying to bond with his father, though the two don't really talk much. However, things go south when during one of your mining sessions a fire breaks out, putting Yujiro in danger. But this is when we get the shocking reveal that his father is actually a Techode too. This is a Techode taking the likeness of his father. His real dad is dead after all. Despite the fact that this isn't a human they're dealing with, he still suffers heavy injuries, so they take him to a facility in the island to get treated. This is when it's revealed to us that the island is actually a rocket launching site, making use of a big ramp to do so. They're able to perform first aid on Yujiro, but things aren't looking well for him. That is until Sayuri shows up out of nowhere. Everyone's confused at the sight of her, and to make things weirder, she's able to slightly heal Yujiro with just a touch. The reason she's here, if you recall, is because she wants to go home. She wants to go to space. The same as Yujiro. So Hajiki, in order to honor their wishes, helps them out in completing the rocket they'll use to travel to space, being able to dig up all the necessary parts that'll take them there. But why did these Techodes come to the island specifically to go to space? Well, the island belonged to a company called the Tunis Space Memorial Company, who offered the service of launching the ashes of the dead and dying people into space. Seems kind of extra, but I guess rich people be doing the most absurd things. But true to the nature of corporations, they kind of cheaped out on their service, only ever shooting rockets up with no intention of getting them back. As a result, these rockets never really made it into space but stuck around the outer layer of Earth's atmosphere. Eventually, all the rockets they shot up began to melt together, forming a huge mass of metal just floating outside Earth. They called it the Rocket Graveyard. Not even space is safe from the harmful environment practices of corporations. This is the place the Techodes want to return to. But things don't get to be peaceful for long because Katana has arrived on the island fully intent on getting Sayuri back. And thus we reach the final conflict of the series. The rocket begins preparation to launch, Sayuri and Yujiro ready to board, but just then Katana steps in, fully intent on stopping Sayuri from going. He becomes very possessive of her, calling her his without trying to understand why she's doing what she's doing. So Hajiki has to put a stop to him, leading to them fighting one last time. Katana calls him out for running away, but he denies this. To Hajiki, all he's been doing is trying to move forward in order to understand himself, his dreams, and a place to call his. Katana calls him foolish for looking for a place that doesn't exist, that he on the other hand will create this place with his own hands. Hajiki smiles. He and Katana really are alike. He wholeheartedly accepts that now. They have the same dreams, but they just have different ideas on how to go about reaching there. This is why they can't really see eye to eye, but he doesn't really care about that anymore. All he wants is to get Sayuri out. This is when they drop the bombshell on us that Sayuri is actually a Techode, but he's in denial. If Zero is the Techode he acquired from that one god he got a hold of, where did Sayuri come from? Well now, here's the thing. As we already know, gods use the thoughts and wishes of a person to either give birth to a Techode or an Atacode, but a person can have more than one wish or thoughts, and when that happens, it's possible for a god to spawn more than one entity. However, those entities all make up one whole. That is the case with Katana's Zero and Sayuri, as well as Hajiki's Lightning and Yujiro. They both spawned two Techodes representing their innermost desires. Hajiki longed for the stars and the strength to have dreams. Katana wanted happiness and a way to attain that happiness through any means necessary. It's why he committed so many acts of violence back in Nighttown. He wanted to take the city by force, just so he could try to make a place people like him could be happy. This is why he's frantically trying to get Sayuri back. He wants his happiness. Their fight leads to them getting knocked off the launch platform, giving Hajiki enough time to get on the ship. He's determined to go to space, but Shinozuka doesn't want him to go. She's afraid that if he does, she'll never see him again, and declares she wants to spend the rest of her life with him. Hajiki thanks her for saying this and promises to come back. As he hops into the rocket, Yujiro starts acting strange, and moments later, he and Lightning begin to fuse, finally making Lightning complete. So now he can talk. Katana is back wanting more, but Lightning easily overpowers him now that he's complete. Katana, not wanting to be beat, grabs hold of Sayuri and tries to force the two back together. Katana has chosen to give up his happiness for the sake of violence. The little girl doesn't resist. If this is what Katana really wants, she'll gladly accept it. She turns around to smile at him one last time, and this is what causes him to change his mind, no longer wishing for that strength anymore. He gives up his fight with Hajiki as well as agree to let her go to space. But as he leaves, he notices Sayuri is still with him. She has decided to stay, reflecting that Katana has finally changed, wanting to truly be happy. This leaves Hajiki and Lightning as the only people going to space. However, it's not going to be a smooth launch since the fight from earlier led to the launch ramp taking some damage, meaning there's a high chance of them crashing mid-launch. This is when Shinozuka steps in with Hayate to support the ramp. This is her way of supporting Hajiki and his dreams. She wants to help him fly. She already knows what that's like and wants to help him experience it too, so she vows to be his wings. With a smile on his face, he thanks her yet again and shoots off into space. This however leads to the collapse of the platform with Shinozuka getting caught in the rubble, but thankfully she's saved by Zero. Hayate on the other hand seemingly destroyed in the collapse, but I don't think Hayate was destroyed per se. I think with Shinozuka realizing she can fly on her own, resolving to help Hajiki fly too, her wish had been granted so she no longer needed her Techode and so it faded away. We see the very same thing happen to Zero, symbolizing that he's given up on his violence and hate, bringing a fitting conclusion to their story arcs. All that's left is Hajiki. He's able to successfully make it to space and finds himself at the rocket graveyard. Despite how warped and airy the place is, there's also an air of peaceful calmness to it. The structure has even been able to create breathable air. It's in this mysterious place that Hajiki finds his dad's plane, the Lightning, as well as his dad. Rather, the essence of his dad. And this is when we get some major lore drops. So, gods originate way out in space. Nobody knows where exactly they come from, but they come to the rocket graveyard because they are drawn to the emotions and thoughts that fill the place. Remember, this is where the ashes of the dead are launched into. The gods take in these thoughts and feelings and then fall into the earth as shooting stars in an attempt to find people to convey these thoughts and feelings to. And they always seem to find the right person they want to communicate with. In a way, the people who encounter gods are fated to encounter them. And this is what happened with Hajiki and Lightning. When he first saw the god, he was strangely drawn to it in a way he couldn't understand. And this was all thanks to his dad. At the moment of his dad's death, he encountered a god that was able to send his thoughts and feelings to the graveyard, and the only thing he really wanted to do was to help Hajiki fulfill his dream of flying, which is why he sends down Lightning, the Techode, to help fulfill that dream. It's a bit fantastical when you think about it, but it works really well in the confines of the series considering how very sci-fi they feel. So Hajiki, finally having his dream fulfilled, has found inner peace, and so, with the help of a bunch of gods protecting him, he returns to Earth safely in the arms of Lightning, reuniting with his mother and sister. Seeing that Lightning has completed its purpose, Hajiki thanks it, and so it fades away, bringing an end to Hajiki's story. To close the series off, we're given a brief montage of everyone and their happy endings. Catherine declared her love for Hachizuka and is determined to win him over. Aiko takes up a job in aiding in the reconstruction of Unit Blue. Takumi has found joy working at Hajiki's mom's restaurant. Shinozuka takes up the role of a teacher at her father's dojo, a choice I'm not too sold on. And as for Katana, he's gone back to being a digger with Sayuri around. However, because he has found happiness, he doesn't really have a reason to be around anymore and fades away, something he wholeheartedly accepts. Hajiki though sets out on a journey to find Katana, for the sole reason of wanting to talk to him. He wants to finally understand the man better and feels that this is the best way to do so. And with that, God Guard ends. I didn't think this anime would be as fun as it did by the time I reached the halfway mark. I fully went into it expecting it to be a gritty toy battle series, but ended up being surprised by how character driven the story was. There were a lot of layers to them, with each of the main characters getting enough screen time to flesh them out. Though it's apparent some of the characters had more thought put into them than others, it never felt like one character was getting the short end of the stick. For an anime original, it's able to actually stick its landing with an ending that doesn't feel rushed whatsoever. At first it was strange taking its climax out of Ninth Town and Unit Blue, especially when it was shaping up to have all hell break loose with the police, but the issue gets resolved off screen and instead gives us proper time to focus on the journey of Hajiki, Katana, and Shinozuka. It was a good move in my opinion, coupled with the change of scenery made it all feel more refreshing and satisfying. I see Gad Guard as one of those animes that captures the spirit of the early 2000s. This was an era where 24 episode seasons were everywhere, and studios felt a lot bolder taking risks on what anime to put out there. It's why a lot of people look back to this era so fondly. There were just a lot of stuff to be found. It wasn't always good, but I'm sure it was special to someone out there. But that's it for this video. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you, and if you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. And if you feel like showing me a bit of more support, you can check out my Patreon where I post exclusive content. As always, this has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.